Okay, well, we're just gonna get started. It's time. You want to be here?
Oh,
Then you should be here.
I'm in the wrong room.
You're in the wrong room unless you want to learn how to hire VMS people.
Send myself.
We are not gonna do Camille's presentation. So if you're here for Camille's presentation, you need to follow him. If you're here to learn how PSI has hired and is training all of their VMS kids, you're in the right place. Dory gave us a little spoiler this morning about how we've been, well, it's mostly Lindsay and I do the hiring and for the support team for the VMS youth. And we're now calling them VMS GenNext, AKA my kids. And people ask her all the time, how do you hire these people? How do you find them? How do you train them? So now you're going to kind of learn a little bit about that strategy. So with us today, we have Dennis O'Brien. Okay.
Oh, thank you.
He doesn't look like it. He's been doing a VMS a long time.
What? I don't have the V on my forehead here. What's the problem?
Okay. So Dennis is we're working on he does our training for us, and we're working on a deal of mentoring for the next 6 months. So we decided that today we would give you the pleasure of learning our plan. Now, Dennis.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I cannot see behind me.
Oh.
One of us needs to do the computer. It could be you, but if you stood on the other side, then I could look at you and look at the computer.
Cool.
And my life would be better, and it's all about me. Okay. As long as he knows it's all about me. Okay, so our problem is that our VMS people are aging out. I'm not saying I only have 4 to 6 years on me before I expire from VMS, but it's a possibility. Okay, so who's going to replace me? This is our problem, right? Because it seems like if you were born, I was born in 64. If you were born in 63 or before, there are very few VMS people in that range. You're born. Wait, I got that backwards. But you know what I'm saying? Okay. VMS people are a little vintage. So that's our problem. Oops, I already moved on to the next slide without going there.
Yeah.
Dennis, you want to speak about this?
Well, it says it all right there. The captains, people that we rely on, right? The ones who know what's going on. Where are they going? Not sticking around by the.
According to Daria, we're taking up golf. I'll be behind my sewing machine. Okay.
No golf for me either.
So, guys, there could be a quilt giveaway. We'll have a drawing at the end. Okay. So the customer concerns are like VMS has cost us a lot. VMS, we have a lot of money in VMS. It runs our business. Blah 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 blah. We would really like to keep this going. And how do we do that? We have to hire some people. We're going to have to, there are torpedoes in the water, and the torpedoes are kind of us, because we've kind of neglected VMS and its system admins. Okay, so our torpedo countermeasures. We're going to hire our VMS GenNext. If you look in the corner, we have VMS GenNext visiting us because they don't get enough of me apparently. And when you're hiring them, if anybody has heard of VMS, they're going to be asking you, people still use that operating system? More likely, they're going to be like, what? And in our case,
If you're lucky, they say that.
if you're lucky, they say that. And in our case, our jobs are advertised as TerraCloud, so they come at me with 21st century IBM stuff. So I'm like, okay, nice. I don't care. I know that I will have to train them from the ground. So I don't care. Okay. So your software support, obviously, you're going to have to invest in bodies, and your hardware support is going to be outsourced, or some companies still have a hardware person on site. So we talked a little bit about some of us vintage people, and we really want, I personally want some years of return on my investment in my VMS people, right? I don't look at them thinking they're going to leave tomorrow. I look at them thinking that if I treat them well and I train them well and give them opportunities, they will stay here because they love it. Because what's not to love about VMS? Hello. So I look at them and I think about hiring younger. Okay, if they came at me and they said, oh, I've been doing VMS for 30 years, I look at them in a different light, right? Because we need those 30 years of experience to help them along. So there's two different ways you could be looking at this as people who are about to hire. In my case, I'm mostly welcoming our IT children. Dennis thinks you might get some middle-aged people, and you might, okay? But if you're going to hire somebody I'm a Linux system admin, and I'm, all about the Linux thing, you're going to get that baggage and attitude that comes with that, okay? Because we are VMS people, we are not Linux people. We have a little bit different mentality. The Windows people, we have a bigger, different mentality. So there are going to be Linux people who can slide right in, okay? Will you find that person? I don't know. Okay.
Right. And these are not necessarily horrible attributes to have, that you're a Linux person, that you're a Windows person, but it's people like Debbie who have to discern if they meet the requirements, they have the drive, they have the interest, they have whatever, the care to bring to this project. So the middle-aged technicians are to be sought after. But again, the caution is that the baggage part of it could.
We all have baggage coming in anything, right? I mean, we have lived. So, I mean, as a support person, I speak to many Linux system admins who are now VMSing. Okay. It's a bridge that I have to span. I have to be the bridge, right? So I comprehend that they have a little bit different mentality than a VMS system admin of old would have had. Some of them can wear multiple hats perfectly. Most of them are like, well, in Linux, I would. Oh, I'm like, okay, well, then let's just pretend we're in Linux and we'll use this command. I mean, Linux is way better than Windows because Windows, we don't point and click. Do not bring that mouse over here. I don't want it. Give me a keyboard. Okay.
I'd also like to mention that there will be a test at the end.
There will be a test at the end. What is his name? We're checking for dementia.
But there will be some sample resumes and stuff that you're going to have to add comments on. So will you take that person or will you not take that person based on what
he is the worst talk show host we ever had. Okay? I'm just throwing you under the bus. But Dennis, I want you to take the next slide.
Oh my goodness.
He has some good stories on this, and they're very valid.
Yeah. You notice I'm saying in here, this is from the customer's perspective, right? The people who are suffering in it know that they're going to lose their VMS personnel. What do they do now? What do they do now? They have to do this. Everything has to be documented. Ha 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 ha. We already do that. Give me a break. No. Really document it fully. I deal with this every day, trying to support customers who did not do this. It's incredibly painful and expensive for them to pay me to do this stuff. So anyway, everything's got to be documented, and I mean everything. Our food that is going to feed the GenNext is the stuff that's being documented now. The knowledge that's out there now. You need to have that. That's how you.
I just want to add a comment on that. Okay, so my kids in the back room, it has been such a pleasure to bring them to VMS and be like, oh, can you learn fundamental? I'll pay you. Can you learn la 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 la? And they're just like, fundamentals, system admin. Give me a VMware thing. I'm on it. And they're just like, I knew VMS was great, and now they do too. But I had no idea this was going to be GenNext food.
Yeah.
Back to you, Dennis.
Very good. So one of the things that Deb and I were talking about earlier is this and how important this is. Customer says, so when now is a good time to start. Do it now. Next slide.
Well, let's hit the environmental history just for a moment.
Okay, sure.
Because I don't know what happens to you, but in my life, I make mistakes. So if I made a Whopper and I never want anyone else who's system adminning these things to make that same Whopper, because it sounded like a good plan up front, didn't it? But then when I started to implement it, it fell apart. Write those down too. Leave a little trail of some breadcrumbs of failure, because we want to set them up for success. Okay, and when are we going to do this?
Now.
Thank you, Sean. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about interviewing and who's going to handle our future.
And why? you know, somebody expresses some interest, open VMS, and they heard there's an opening, what do they do? What do? You start Googling around, don't you see what's up? I don't know anything about this open VMS, so you look around. One of the first things you'll hit is this. That is a count. I don't know how accurate this is, right? It's just Google stuff, but anyway.
Google never lies.
But that's a count of how many opportunities or how many companies really are involved with open
Known
VMS.
companies.
Yes, known, correct. But anyway.
So manufacturing, 765 manufacturing places are using VMS.
And those would be, quite a few of those would be the ones that you've heard in other talks where people don't even know that they're using it. It's over there measuring the chemicals that are being mixed to make their contact lenses or some crazy thing, it's like it just goes.
Forever.
Yeah, so they're there. Like Johan was saying earlier, it's like we got customers coming that we don't know we're there yet, but they're gonna come to us. Anyway.
So
this gets them excited.
Yeah, it could get them excited. So when you're looking at your candidates, I'm kind of nervous when I start interviewing them and I already have a job, right? But, what are they going to think when they're talking to me? But if I'm talking to a recent college grad, what are they thinking? We're back to what is VMS?
Right.
How long am I going to stay here? Am I really going to look for another job in a year? I mean, they're thinking all of these things. We know they have zero exposure to VMS, except for that David Brennan said that here in Europe, they do have textbooks that actually compare other operating systems to how VMS was made, which was a surprise to me. Okay. But in my world, people aren't taught anything about VMS. And so they're also, if you're looking at somebody who's 23 years old and you're thinking you're going to have them as your next system admin, you really got to be thinking about what are we going to give them? We're going to teach them a legacy operating system. Yep. And what else? They're going to want something else.
One of the things I want to throw on here also is, digital in the past, almost created their own manufacturing of personnel that they could pick from by, I don't know if they donated them or gave the universities a massive discount to pick up the vaxes and all the other stuff. They then put into the computer science department. And then that's what people were using to learn on it. But I checked MIT's computer science curriculum for this talk. And, besides seeing some courses where I said to myself, I can teach that one. Besides that, there was no mention of open VMS in there anywhere. Anywhere. Now you found one that did, right?
That was David who said in his textbooks. And then mine was saying that you heard about it in your school.
Yeah, my school and also my sister-in-law.
That's hard.
But she's old like me, so it's okay. So, yeah. Okay, so when someone comes to your interview, we're always, Dennis has a different view on this than I do about them preparing for their interview. They should be prepared. They know this is an IT sort of job. Will they have found anything about VMS on the internet? Maybe, maybe not. In my case, they probably don't know it's a VMS job. Okay, so how much preparation could they realistically do for our jobs? In your cases, they could be looking up what your company does, and that could excite them, and they want to be a part of that. Okay. In my case, they do see terracotta, and some of them are like, oh, that's very interesting that you have multiple places. They find energy machines and get all into that. Only a few of them find the open VMS side. So they could come up with these kind of answers. But these kind of answers here, if they knew they're going for a VMS job, are pretty readily available.
Yeah, but I like this. This could get them intrigued. That statement right there. It's a secure and solid platform still in use within many industries. I know it's a generic statement, but on the other hand, it's true. And the secure and solid part of it carries weight. You know what I mean? And if I was fresh out of college, or whatever, taking an interview with Debbie, I'd be saying, secure and solid. I kind of like that. Let me see what this is about. Move from there.
And then if a person really, really spent some time thinking about working in VMS, they could find out more information about VMS. So we would say that they're better prepared that they were much more interested in this job, maybe.
So they come in with that question right there. So if everything that Debbie just said is true, and what I was just saying is true, then why is this thing not more widely used today? Now, why happened? That would be an expected question from somebody who is a candidate. So Debbie's prepared for that.
I am. I'm going to tell them it's a secret club, and we might let them in. So no, but for me, I look at interview prep more like if I'm looking for someone who's jumping from Linux over, I'm looking for someone who's more into their career already, then this becomes more important to me. But our kids are already taught this is what you should just do. So this is not that important to me in the younger people because the odds of them knowing anything about what I'm about to tell them are slim. What is important to me is at the end of the interview, after I've told them what VMS is and how fabulous it is, and I've sold them on working for me at this company and what a grand time we have, how do they sound by the end of the interview? Because at the beginning of the interview, it's all for them. At the end of the interview, hopefully we're comfortable and we're now talking to each other. So at the end of the interview, if they comprehended what I said, and there's some people are like, oh, what's the next step? This is great. I would love to be here. And some people are like, okay, when will you let me know anything? And some people just hang up. Okay. So you kind of get a clue from that when you're interviewing on, well, how much excitement did we raise today? Or do they have the flu? We don't know.
And sometimes the people who come in and are instantly comfortable, they make you a little nervous right there. Why are you so comfortable with this right now? Knowing what we're about to spill on them, that would make me a little nervous, right?
It makes me feel good.
Comfortable.
I make them comfortable. I make them comfortable because I'm not going to know them in an hour if I don't try to get their nerves calmed down. So I almost always mess up in the first 5 minutes. Like I said, the interview is going to look like this, and I get it out of order. And then I'm like, oopsies. And you know what? It makes them feel like I'm human. They can make a mistake too. So what if when we look for people in a candidate, no one believes me when I say this, but this is so stinking true. I mean, we are not many of us are very super young. We've all worked in other jobs. Have you ever worked next to somebody you just like wished you didn't work next to? My first thing is, can I think I want to work with this guy or woman for the next 30 years? Okay, in VMS, we don't leave VMS. So how can I work? I'll be here 4 to 6. Can I stand working with them for 4 to 6 years? And will my kids who are already here want to work with them for the next 10 or 15 or 20, whatever it's going to be? If the answer to that is no, I'm going to protect my team, right? They're gone. So that's the first thing I look at is, can we stand these people? Then when I'm looking at a resume, a lot of times you see a resume and okay, let's say we're hiring for the level 1 job, for the introductory job. I was a support person for a level 1 person here. I went to here and I was a level 1. I was here, I was a level 1. I was here, I was a level 1. Okay, I'm like out of here because if all you have ever gotten to is a level 1, I wonder, is this all you're capable of, or did you just jump around jobs? I don't know, but it's a red flag. They're gone. If they've been, system admin, and I'm looking for a level 2 job, if it was a different industry, that becomes more interesting because a lot of system admins know, if you think about our level 2 for support, okay, we have to know a lot of weird stuff. So every different industry is calling in and they're using the software a little bit differently. You can't have lived in one industry and expect to survive and support very quickly. We'd have to be training them because another set of how we use VMS is going to come in here and you'll be like, never thought of that. And maybe you can learn fast, but that's a red flag unless you are looking for someone who knows those specific things.
Yeah, I think one of the things that Debbie has to do, and she's really good at, is this bullet here where it says, does this candidate look like they enjoy IT in general and solving problems and thinking through issues and coming up with a solution. And if she can discern that, well, then that person doesn't get gaunt.
That's true. They don't get gone. So when I'm looking at hiring the level 1 people, I'm like, okay, we want someone who loves IT. We don't want someone who loves Linux. We don't want someone who loves Windows. We don't want a gaming person. We don't want oh, I'm a cybersecurity guy in the banking. We don't want that because we don't have that to offer. We have general IT. And now that we have x86, it's even better for us because we can say, okay, come on in and learn VMS. This is a legacy system. There will be jobs in the future and you will be a commodity, but people don't understand that. On top of that, we'll give you VMware or we'll give you the Linux with the KVM. We'll give you something that is also marketable outside of VMS. So luckily in the VMS land with x86, we have something to offer besides VMS. And we need that, right? Because us VMS people cannot tune Linux. So do they like IT in general? Because here we're going to be generalists and we need to know a little bit more than just our little pigeonhole, okay? And then sometimes you look at these resumes. I was looking at one as I compiled our test resumes. I was looking at one and maybe I didn't pay attention to it until I was editing it to take out the personal stuff. And there was 3 different kind of formats in it. And I'm like, how badly does this guy want this job? Now, if you were looking for that kind of guy, he had very specific skills. You would not even have paid attention to that. You've been like, well, he's really crappy at making resumes, but he's really good at this. If that's what you wanted, you'd be interviewing him. And then you'd be interviewing his GenNext twin because he was also very dated.
That sounds like an O'Brien kind of resume, actually, with all those mismatched,
And sometimes, like Lindsay goes through the resumes with me, and if there's a ton of spelling errors, we're just like, if you don't care enough about your resume to get this right, we kind of don't want you because we send a lot of mail. So there's things that are going to matter to you that may not matter to me. You have to match that to your own environment, of course. So then when we look at hiring someone with VMS experience, there are going to be very few people who have VMS experience who are not vintage, right? So if you are okay with a vintage person, then you can find the 12 VMS people who are unemployed right now and go hire one of them.
that was 12 of you missed it.
Well, 1, 2. There's just not very many VMS people out there because we recently hired a level 2 job and most of the candidates were not qualified. Okay, so there are a few VMS people who are still looking for work. Some have retired and want to get back in the workforce because they love to work. We have some of those people working at BSI. They just want to work. That's their retirement plan. If you're looking for, like, I'm going to do VMS till 2050, like we saw on the slide, do you want to hire somebody who is ready to just leave who could realistically leave at any minute? This is a decision you have to make. And if your system admin left, like we sometimes get contracts from customers, their system admin gave them a month notice. Okay, well, that's a pretty scary place for a company to be if they realize they had the VMS, right? You may end up having to hire one of these and one of the kids. Because that's,
It is. Train them up. One trains the other.
One trains the other. We must have duplicated this. Okay, so again, would we work with them? Would we want to work with them? Okay, what happens sometimes when you're interviewing, like I could interview Dennis, I'm looking here, I'm like, okay, expect blah, 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 blah. And then he comes to me and he says, oh, and by the way, I do this thing. Like we recently interviewed somebody and, oh, by the way, I'm a junior programmer. I'm like, oh. Now he has different interests to me because our programmers are a day older than God. So, I mean, on the support team, okay? Not speaking about engineering. So I'm like, a junior programmer in the US is not going to find a job. Just not. So, but to me, I offer him programming options that he would have never considered. So, you don't know when you're speaking with them about their habits or their interests, what kind of secret thing may come up that you weren't even thinking about. And all of a sudden you're like, oh.
But those habits and interests can really tell you a lot about that individual right there. Do they do something that they've been able to focus on and have a drive and an intensity that fits what's needed here? You know, I mean, that could be something totally off from the world of, it could be a good tennis player or something, I don't care. Something that they really got into. That's important. If you find something like that, that fits that bill,
Exactly.
and it's worth looking at.
And it's just working like, I mean, what's an hour conversation? You might have found your gem. You might have found that you wasted your hour. So the bottom line is, do as Dennis says and prepare. You know, I mean, we want to just be like, you know, I still sometimes I'm of the habit of, if I just ignore this problem, it's going to go away. Well, it is going to go away in our case. Okay, it's going to walk out the door, and we'll still have the problem. So we need to stop that habit. And if you said, oh well, I'm leaving VMS anyway. I don't know if any of you have tried to leave VMS, but that's not the easiest thing to do. So somebody needs to be the captain, you know. And then and if you were to look at hiring out to a third-party consulting company to do your system admin, that is certainly an option. But remember that most of them are also my age or old. Okay, I'm not saying I'm old. I'm just saying I'm vintage.
I can vouch for exactly what you just said, you know, because everybody that works in my company is this vintage. We're facing the same problems, right, as far as hiring more people.
Yeah, and you're just yeah. Okay, so Dennis has this crazy idea. We'll just let him talk about this. We don't actually offer this service, but Dennis had this crazy idea.
Well, since we are BSI, for crying out loud, and we know VMS better than everybody, let's go with that fact. Why don't we do this? Why don't we offer to the customers that if they think they've got a candidate, come to us, ask us about that candidate, let us vet that candidate and give a judgment for the customer. So, you know, it's kind of like since your company, whoever's in their HR department is not necessarily VMS oriented at all, they're giving a little bunch of comments or questions to ask or something like that. You know, great, they've got somebody who passed phase one, now pass them over to
Dennis.
PSI, who will find a gem in the GenNext crowd that comes through. So we're going to massage their brains and probe for VMS tendencies. That's it. I'm very skilled at that. Brain massage. Why? Because they or the customer, it's themselves, may not even know that these people are good candidates for what we have in mind for them. You know, you have to kind of drive a little deeper, and that's where we can be of assistance to the customer. We can do that deeper dive. Yeah, so we're calling it the brain probe, Daria.
She's like, oh, interesting. Okay, so this is Dennis's idea, but realistically, I was counting them this morning. Since I've been the manager of this 14, we've hired 18 of the kids. And one is a project manager and 3 went to our other Terra Cloud partners. So if we do the math, I've hired a lot of kids, okay? And to date, they are all, actually, I had to move the bar. I'm like, okay, they'll be here in a year, they'll be here, and then I had to move the bar because where I thought they'd be in a year, they are there much sooner, okay? So the kids, they really are learning super fast. I am so proud of it. Really, some of them, when I speak to them, I know I'm mushy, but they bring tears to my eyes with I get to know that when I retire, my precious VMS is in good hands. So that makes me so happy. And I feel like part of the success is that in my career in the CSC, I have known thousands of support people. I have met thousands of customers. So there's I'm a people observer. So I feel like that's part of why I've been successful, because nobody's left me yet. And now I start threatening them. You can't leave me. Okay, so let's talk about training. Now we hired the person. We found this person and we feel like we can live it forever and they have great potential. So we're going to need to train. Okay, if they came into our world with no VMS experience. BSI offers some training. Dennis is our main trainer person.
Yes, man.
You got distracted by the door. It's like a squirrel.
Sorry. So the neat thing about the open VMS training is the way it kind of tiers, and takes you right up to the internals level and so forth. If you need to go that far, like if you're gonna have somebody who's gonna be reading crash stops and so forth, some of the folks out there, the kids will be doing that. But, user admin, just about everybody who's gonna do anything with VMS needs that, okay?
Yeah,
Well, I'm not gonna be the system admin. I don't care. If you're gonna be using VMS, you probably should be aware of what's happening at that level. Now, what about the programming stuff and the internal stuff? Who cares about that?
Not me.
I'm not a programmer, so what do I care, right? You want to understand this system? Want to have a good understanding of this system? You gotta go here. I'm sorry. Maybe you don't have to go to the internals. Well, I'm not gonna be reading crash dumps and so forth. Well, you ever gonna have a crash dump? I don't know. Maybe. You want to have a shot at understanding what it's saying to you? Take the internals class. Now, that's not for everybody. You don't have to go through the whole gamut, right? They just don't. But certainly the first two and other levels are optional, I would say, if you are a programmer or if some of your potential personnel are going to be programmers, they need the system services runtime library oriented course utilizing VMS features from C or whatever it is. The name doesn't really connote the fact that it's a heavily programming oriented course, but it is.
And then once you, do you need to go back?
One more thing.
Sorry.
The last thing in there was custom, which means that VSI can offer to a customer something that is customized for their particular use when we pick and choose pieces from these various classes. And it's literally right down to, if you've got DCL command procedures that you want your people to know when they're through with this training, and we're doing this training customized for you, bring them. Give us 4 or 5 command procedures or whatever. We'll take your personnel right through the command procedures that they're going to have to be dealing with and changing and interacting with and whatever. Likewise with the programmers. If somebody's a Fortran programmer, C programmer, whatever they are, and they're going to take a utilizing VMS features from Fortran or C, I would want to come out with, if I was that student, I would like to see an interpretation of what I'm dealing with as a neophyte programmer on OpenVMS. Oh, gee whiz, I can go along looking at all this, the first 50 lines, 60 lines, 100 lines. Now it comes down, there's a $6 QIO in there. And I'm saying, there's 12 arguments to this thing. What is this?
Hide under the desk.
Well, you know what I mean?
Yes.
I mean, if it's pertinent immediately to what they are doing, it's primo and it's worth its weight in gold.
Absolutely. And then along with that,
Oh, yes, there's this.
there's this.
There's-
Because it's not enough to send people to training. What do? Oh, I sent you to VMS fundamentals. You had a week. Log in here and do some things for me. That's not realistic,
Right.
is it?
So this is a very nice option, I think, which I know is going to be used here.
We're going to use this. So I have some money in my budget. I'm hiring Dennis and his people, and they're going to spend some hours with the kids through the rest of the year on the mentoring, because we train. I have poured VMS all over their heads. And now he's going to make sure that it's soaking in.
Did you catch that? She was
I
pouring.
poured it on their heads. That's what I call it.
And
Take
now
some more
it's-
training. Here, have a course.
And now it's going to soak in. Nice. But anyway, yeah, so that's I think not quite training, what I mean, but it's kind of even Uber training, it's beyond training in a certain way.
But we send them to training. Can they use that, whatever that we need in our shops? Can they use that part of that training in their shop?
And this last comment where I said here, a best result if in-house, what I was thinking is, if the customer had been through all this stuff and kind of knew it was kind of the key guy there, that person would be the mentor. They don't have to get involved with VSI necessarily at that point. They've got their own mentor that they could use.
Yes.
That would be fine.
And if they don't,
If they don't, we're here.
okay. So you can get training from us. What a surprise. So we put the website in here. If you find a class you're interested in, you can go to the website, sign up, or you can contact us. We are ready to do some training for
Right,
you.
it's self-paced and, there's also regionally offered public courses and so forth that you can select from. So there's all kinds of options, yeah.
All kinds of options. If you don't see an option you like, I'm pretty sure we would take your money and give you one. Because we want VMS to live forever. So here's a little note on the custom training.
Yeah, so every now and then we get a customer who is very intent on having it be specific to their environment. So there's some legwork that has to go on before that course is delivered, where we basically cherry pick items from various courses, create a course for them, use command procedures from their site, use programs from their site if that pertains. And we basically build delivery around what's important to them specifically. And that's not as heavy use as I would like to see it, because I think it's very effective, but it's an option.
And even with that, you're still gonna need a mentor. You're still gonna have to prepare, be ready. If you send somebody to do a class, I honestly don't really even care if it was someone who is a seasoned person. If you send them to a class, you really should be asking them to do things afterwards to help solidify that knowledge,
And one of the
and giving them the time to use that. Yes, sir.
Just a quick back to the previous slide. Look at their DCL, look at their code.
Yeah.
Also look at their data. So this RDB, what's a critical RDB table in your application? What's a critical RMS file in your application? Then we can use that as the example to work on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Okay, so how long does it take to train somebody? I know we're like in a world of instant gratification. Well, you don't get that, okay? You just don't get that. They went to a couple of years of school just to learn generic IT, and they come to me, oh, I know Python. Well, it turns out they know how to spell Python, okay? If I knew, that is the reality of it. They got like intro to all of these things in college, and now they're here at my door. And I don't really care about all of those things, because when they come here, they're gonna learn VMS, and they may learn some of those things actually, but it's gonna take, you should plan on a year. I look at the kids. Like, I don't need to pick on Kobe. Kobe's doing doggone really well. And he's gonna work he's working with our install group who do installs, professional service wise. And you've been here what?
A year and a half, almost two.
I was going to give you 2.5. Okay, so in a year and a half, almost 2, this man, we would trust to log into your machine and upgrade it. Okay, so it is possible, if you focus on this, to get something good. And I take your machine seriously. I would not let the man loose on them. Even for myself, I'm like, and I know I can do it, but okay.
And the experience in another OS, I think, is terrific. Depending on how deep they went, hopefully they can convey that to Debbie, I wasn't just spelling Python. I was actually doing something.
Right, using Python.
You know what I mean?
And some Linux people, especially if you're a KVM shop.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
And VMS. Oh my God, I am a TCP/IP person. I need to test with Linux. I have to get a kid. Okay. Can you set up this thing on the Linux machine and let me test? So, there is value there. Just saying. Okay. So what if we terrified you and you're not really ready for all of this? Okay. Because you really do need to kind of plan on 6 months to a year, 6 months if your shop does these 3 things. If you want them to understand those 3 things, you might as well turn them right here. Okay, if you don't want to search for a candidate, if you don't want to vet the candidate, if you don't want to hire that person or train them, then we suggest that you hire managed services, which we have to offer. Okay, and then I was talking to the account team. We're kind of bouncing around this idea of VMS Support Plus. So this weekend, we had a customer who totally horked up his cluster and corrupted his system disk. So because we are way too kind, we spent 6 hours with him restoring that system disk from a backup. Then the next day, we spent 3 hours with him getting those 2 remote nodes booted into the cluster. Okay. how much of that is really paid for by his support contract? Probably where we said, oh, you messed this up, you're gonna need to restore them back up. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, that's what is the reality of support. You don't pay to have us help you rebuild this thing. Okay, but we're thinking about offering a service where you could get support plus because you have a junior system admin, or it's your Linux guy running the VMS machine, which it was in this case, where you can have some number of hours per month of brain time from the support team. So Jan and I are kind of working out some details on that. So I think we're if there's any interest in that, if you mentioned it to your account team, we're kind of considering, should we do this or not? Because it would make it easier on the support team where we don't have to say, I'm sorry, your cluster is down, but it stinks to be you. You know, nobody wants to say that. We want your cluster back up. So
Frankly, I think this is huge.
Can I say something on that too? Additionally, right? Something.
Oh, the Sully man. Speak, Sully. While Sully speaks, I'm gonna get ready for the gong show.
By going through this support plus piece of it or getting some amount of hours, you will go through the paperwork with your company to get that money allocated, rather than having to wait till you're in the middle of a fire.
Right.
And then it's like, I can't get PO, I can't get that,
Yeah.
all of a sudden, your company is inhibiting your ability to get the money to help us fix it.
Right.
So, something like this, having, an amount of hours prepaid, and available for emergencies like this, it's seamless, you go right from support to now we're gonna help you, and you've already got the beans in the pot to pay for.
And we have
You don't
this
have to-
plan kind of thing where we're like, well, we'll send you a thing that says your company will pay for this and la, 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 la. Okay, your cluster is down.
Right.
Now we're just poking sticks at
Yeah,
you.
we wanna wait 48 hours, 72 hours for the paperwork to come through before we start helping you, yeah.
The other
That'd
thing
be
is too,
great.
because your team's got a lot of diverse experience.
Yes.
So if it's something else,
Yeah.
it may not have anything to do directly. If they change something, some bit of hardware, chances are there's somebody on your diverse team that will.
We have a lot of people who know a lot of weird stuff, who
Exactly.
don't mind us calling out them at weird hours.
Correct. Whereas the client, the customer won't necessarily have that.
They will not have that. Well, especially if like,
That's a benefit that you can offer.
yes. So we're blessed. I'm sorry.
Has the support plus in SLA like 20% and
So if we do a support plus thing, because we don't do it now, you would have your support contract, which has your SLA. And then if you paid for 5 extra hours a month, if we're like, oh, your cluster's down, hey, you've got 5 hours. Let's do
And
this.
annual one, you can maybe.
I think that, I don't know what we'll do.
Yeah.
Okay. So that just seems to make good sense to me, because we met your response time, whatever that was. It did not help you. You're still down, so this would be on top of that if we do it.
Debbie, if you look over the support calls, what percentage would you think are not actually support issues? Nothing is broken.
If you look at the definition of support, that's remedial support. And in my world of TCP/IP, okay, I will only speak for my world of TCP/IP. I think I'll speak more globally. In my world of TCP/IP, I'm going to say that more than 50% is some kind of configuration problem. That's not remedial support. You didn't configure this right.
Right.
Okay, but you don't know how to configure it. We're just going to get done. Okay, so we cover that as normal support, even though technically that is not.
Well, that's my point, that we have always been nice and helping them out. And I think, Michael, you don't know me, I helped him with a little Get API problem, and it's
Yeah.
just strictly an education problem.
Yes.
He could have.
So
customer could have
way
found
more
it.
than 50%. So remedial support is like, your product is broken. What are we going to do with it?
Right.
Okay, I'm going to say that's less than 20%.
Mm.
Now, my personal opinion about x86 is, as I've watched many new products roll out, they have more remedial support situations. Okay, so x86 will crash. It will confuse us as a whole. So those calls would fall under support, of course. But as x86 continues, it will stop crashing. And we will get back to the old. I really think in TCP/IP land, it's closer to 75 to 90% is a configuration problem, or you just don't understand NFS.
Right.
Okay, so,
But nice, but you can say, we can expand our support definition to include helping, not just in out of the goodness of our heart, but I see that as a transition into support plus, where you say, this is to handle the question.
right, and when we kind of have this unspoken rule that I probably should tell the kids, that we'll kind of give you 15 minutes of guidance.
Okay.
Okay, but if you're gonna need 3 hours of guidance, now we need to just draw that line, you know? Okay, so what we're gonna do next, oh man, I forgot how to work this stupid thing. Okay, is the resume gong show. I mean, you should never put a mouse in my hand, okay? Just, it's a mistake.
I thought it said resume. Did we already start this? I'm just.
Okay, and then we have the you really shouldn't put a mouse in my hand because I can't get it back to this window. Oh, got it. Okay.
There's some support help.
You know, you should not put me on a Microsoft product.
She's come, hold on.
So I have this list with the kids of things that I don't want to learn before I retire. And Microsoft happens to be one of them. Ah, how to use a mouse is apparently one of them. Will you make it go over there? Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
I need support.
But then I'll walk back to window.
Really easy.
Look, we have support here. We all need support, and I'm the first one to ask for help. Okay, so we have this candidate here.
Maybe increase the larger bit.
Debbie's gonna read all this.
Okay, so we have a candidate here. So this candidate is, we'll just say they're fictitious because I might have glommed some resumes together from the web. Okay, so we have from 2012 on, he's been a mainframe file specialist, right? Okay. Before that, okay, if you don't know what middleware is, it's kind of things like MQ series. He did SFTP, FTP, did some encryption. They were a consultant for this company. He worked on a migration. They were a programmer here from 2009 to 2011. He knows all kinds of VMS stuff. He worked at company 4 from 1998 to 2011. He was a senior system admin. It was company 5. He was just a regular system admin from 95 to 99. Before that, for 5 years, he was here as a senior admin. He was a department head in 1985 to 1990. And he knows all this stuff. Okay. So this is kind of a double-edged question. So Dennis, you're hiring for level 1. What do you say to this guy?
I say to him, tell me more
Wait.
about this. Tell me more about this system programmer thing.
Do you have your thing? Here, are you gonna, we're playing the gong show. We don't have a gong.
I'm the gonger.
He's the gonger. Dennis, you gonging him for a level 1 job, for an introductory person job.
Well, what I was saying a minute ago was this was intriguing to me, but not necessarily as a level 1 guy, as a systems programmer. Would be somebody like Hein or whatever, somebody who can dig around underneath, can use code to mess with it. That's a systems program, somebody who writes kernel code, whatever. I don't think that's what we're hiring this guy for. You know, I mean, so.
Okay, if you're looking at him as a senior person, you gonging him or you can interview him
Well, I would interview this guy anyway. Just to see
if he was
what's
a
up.
senior guy.
But really, I would also be very reticent to expect anything out of it.
So in my mind,
Yeah, we don't necessarily agree on these things.
we don't have to agree on these things. In my mind, I'm gonging him. Give me the gong. No, I'm gonging him because realistically, if he was the department head in the 80s, am I really going to get any time for him to come in, learn my operation, and train my people? Am I? I'm gonging him. And plus, I don't see anything interesting here where it says I can do internals. And where we lack people is not, I can do VMS. We could train that clearly in a year and a half, okay? What we can't train in a year and a half is, I can do a crash dump.
Right.
That's a lifetime training.
And this comment right here, like I was pointing out, what he put underneath that would indicate the lack of understanding what that, what it would entail to be a systems program.
Okay, so candidate one, I gave him the gong, for both. We are running out of time.
Indeed.
Can we look at one more or not? We just skip it. Okay, if you put up another resume, like number 5,
Yeah, pick a number.
or 6.
Don't tell me, put a number.
Yes. I was wondering, if I look at what he has done, he started as a manager.
Candidate two.
Then a senior, then a senior off.
Okay,
Downgrade.
we did have a couple of downgrades.
What candidates do they open?
Debbie, which one?
6.
6, let's just do 6.
Too many areas, like too many different jobs.
Well, he really was a middleware person all the way through the race.
Daria, was that Maniac?
I would ask you why you decided to apply for support level 2.
Well, I've had people like that apply for level 1. I'm like, okay, so this person here has some skills. He told us what his skills are. His work experience is, what else is somewhere over there? Okay, so his work, let's go to his work experience. He was a software engineer here. And he has some achievements. Okay, so he's had one job right here from 2021 to 2023. He's applying for the level 1 work. Okay. So
I like the fact that he monitors and accepts escalations, so he's at least minimally prepared to say this needs to get further up the line, which shows that he can handle it, I think.
And understands what SLAs.
No joke.
okay, so so when I look at this, I say, okay, what we got here is he does this microtik. He turns out microtik is some kind of hardware like a Cisco, right? He can do some Linux, some C. He can do some stuff. He's not out of school long, it looks like, or he's just recently gone into IT. That is okay with me. He doesn't look like he's all about Windows or whatever. He looks like he's got his eyes and his mind open.
Yep.
Okay, so gonging him or keeping him?
No, he's worth talking to.
He's worth hiring. Okay, I know this because he works for me. And he's currently learning how to do crash dumps, and he will have been here for 2 years in June.
I like the word Splunk in there because that means he likes to dig into stuff and then automate stuff.
So you just never know when you look at these resumes. When you talk to them, you're like, this kid's a little super genius who's been pigeonholed into networking. Because I'll plain out ask him, are you really stuck on this networking thing? And they're like, no, I'm just doing that. And if they're like, oh, I gotta be a cyber guy, gone, you're out of here. Okay, thank you. And I'll be like, ah, yeah. Anyway, so thank you for your time today. I hope this inspires you.
Questions?
Remember, if you can't solve your problems, come to us. We can. I don't know about that. My husband will help you with that.
I think before long, I mean, BSI and Total are important reflections. So rather than having to be defensive about how do we get these young people in, it's going to be very soon that you're going to be flooded because you've got enough young people.
And our young people are amazing.
Yeah, and plus, instead of just being a startup, you're kind of a startup that's got incredibly strengths.
Yes.
So you can
Will it sound more loud?
Good
No,
salary.
it will not.
Working with big organizations around the world,
Yes.
that's amazing customer base. And there's a lot of opportunities.
There are a lot of opportunities.
Yes. So I think you're going to be,
And luckily, when the kids come here, we have a lot of opportunities.
yeah.
So they can branch out. So, okay, thank you for your time today.
Thanks.